Conscient Podcast, episode 98, the second last one of season 3. What I'm doing here is reading you a blog that I've written for the month of January 2022. That's on my website. I'm reading it to you, but I'm also improvising it a little bit. So I wanted to start by just playing a little bit of the first episode from this season, which was a fictional case study called A Case Study. So today we're going to do a case study of the second season of the Conscient podcast, which ran from March to August 2021. It was produced by an Ottawa-based sound artist, Claude Schreier, who has passed away now, but I was very fortunate that his children, Rial and Clara, kindly helped me do some of the research for this class, so I want to thank them. And I want to check and see if you've all had a chance to listen to the course materials, which were Conscient Podcast episodes 19, Reality, and 62, Compilation. Were you able to...
Excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
Can you tell me why you chose this podcast specifically? I mean, there must have been a lot of different podcasts in Canada covering topics of art and environment. So why this one specifically?
Well, that's a very good question. I chose the second season of this podcast because Schreier was exploring the themes of reality and ecological grief. That seemed really timely in 2021, and still is today. The podcast gave us a snapshot of what artists and cultural workers were thinking in relation to the ecological crisis. I had a lot of fun doing this episode with my family. I was able to record them remotely and here in the studio, and it was really a pleasure to have Rial, Clara, and my wife Sabrina participate. And not just this program, but also the episode 91. Rial and Sabrina were playing characters in a play by Keith Barker. And this episode, 63 and 64, I presented a couple of times to university classes, people who are studying arts administration and that kind of thing. And I got some really interesting feedback and some very good questions. I'll give you an example of a question from a student in an arts policy, equity, and activism class at Centennial College in Toronto.
My question is more towards, I think, in the arts industry, and on top of that, in terms of activism, I feel like there's also a really high risk for burnout and for sort of a lack of reward in terms of the work that you do. I think a lot of the time it falls on deaf ears. And so I was wondering, in your experience, what support systems have been put in place to support arts activists in their journey? And if it's okay if there's a gap in that, if there isn't a support system that that's okay. But I would just like to know.
And you can hear my answer and more conversation about art and activism in this episode, which is 86. So, I've been working on a new piece for a while now, and it's going to conclude season 3. It's episode 99. This one's 98. And it's going to be a soundscape composition called Winter Diary Revisited. And it's my way to remember and to send my thanks and homage to composer Armory Schaefer, who passed away in August of 2021. The piece is going to feature excerpts from an unpublished essay that Murray wrote, that he wrote shortly after we took a 10-day field recording trip in rural Manitoba in 1997. And we did that trip to record a radio program, a commission he received from the West German radio, and the piece was about winter soundscapes. And you'll see, I revisited it essentially by re-recording a bunch of winter sounds in and around where I live here in Ontario and Quebec. L'épisode 100 du balado conscient sera une version française de cette même composition de paysages sonores, journal, divers, revisité. So after publishing episode 100, I'm going to take a fairly long break from podcast production. I'll give you guys a break as well. And I'm going to think about next steps. Where do I want to go with this? I'll probably be doing some surveys as well to get some listener feedback, that kind of thing. So this is a time for you to get caught up on some of the episodes that maybe you haven't heard or you want to hear again. All of the they're all indexed in on the website and available. And I wanted to play back a little bit of one of the episodes at the beginning of the season where I talk about what I was hoping would happen in this season. And I did that while I was floating on a kayak at the cottage. There's a duck. You hear it? The wings are so beautiful. Share the process of failure, of attempts to change that didn't work, just in a very straightforward kind of way, because that's life, we make mistakes and we stumble and we learn and we get excited and then we look back and then we observe and all that. So that's what season 3 will begin like, because I actually can't predict what it will end like. Because, well, I'm just starting. I did make mistakes, stumble, and learn in season 3. For example, my promise to do short episodes did not happen. The idea of doing everything in a single take, lots of editing. The idea of asking all guests about radical listening didn't work for everyone. So I learned and I adjusted my ways as season 3 unfolded, and I got better at listening. And sometimes, as the theme of the season proposed, I was able to listen quite radically, attentively, and actively to my guests during the conversations, and that made a difference. More listening, less talking. I was lucky that I was able to do most of the conversations in season 3 live in either Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal, which allowed me to use better quality sound equipment and also to interact directly with my guests, which was great. As you can imagine, some episodes were not as good as others. For example, one that I'm disappointed in is episode 69, Sound Walk in the Dark.
Good morning. It's 4:56 on Wednesday, September 29th. And I'm about to go for something I've never done before, a sound walk in the dark. It's dark out, and I wanted to share with you this experience of walking in the dark. See what happens.
Now, at the time, it seemed like a really good idea to share my experience of improvising a sound walk in the dark. However, the result in this case was fun for me to produce, but I don't think made for very good podcast listening. And in retrospect, I probably should have edited this one down to its bare, to the best moments. Like this one.
On a hill, so you can feel gravity and the pull downwards is this interesting sensation. It's like I'm dancing with the mountain.
So I'm going to continue experimenting with new formats and sometimes uncomfortable situations for me and for you. I think that's part of sonic exploration, and being in the climate emergency is trying new things and trying to make sense of it all. But I will be careful to keep things at the highest level of production possible. How's that for a promise? Now, on a more positive note, one of the things I realized during season 3 is that I have a very high sensitivity to tone of voice. And I did an episode about this, number 81, called Inspiration. And I explain it this way. The tone and emotion in the voice of each person inspires and uplifts me every time I listen to it. And so I did this rather long episode with at least one excerpt from every episode I had done up until that time in mid-November. Here are a few excerpts.
Thinking about that in the age of the climate crisis, I think gives us a tremendous opportunity to explore and to embody possibility.
We want to awaken in order to be of service to everyone.
Creative cultural allegiance, and how do we use that to in a purposeful way is a critical question now for us all.
Comment faire en sorte de nourrir une nouvelle réalité? Comment avoir créé de l'art qui soit régénératif, qui nourrisse quelque chose?
I also came to realize that season 3, that I was continued to be very deeply moved by the layering of words and soundscapes. There's something about it that when new contexts for listening are created, I find it very, very stimulating. It's like the spirits of the sounds are actually speaking directly to me, and that I can hear and feel their presence. Now, I've always felt this, but I rarely talk about it because it sounds so, strange or hard to explain. But there it is. It's something that I just love doing. And I'm interested to know if you have any similar experiences. Please write or reach out to me and let me know. So I'm going to give you a little preview of episode 99 because this is an example of layering of words and soundscapes.
When Murray and I recorded Winter Diary in 1997, we recorded a lot of different winter sounds, but not cross-country skiing. And it is a typical sound of winter in Canada, and a very rich one. You can hear me skiing now, as well as people skiing beside me. And skiing sounds have a number of different elements. There's the push and pull of the ski, and the poles that hit into the snow, and of course the breath of the skier. And sometimes you can hear the wind in the trees. Snowmobiles in the distance. Dog.
So thank you for listening in to Season 3. Season 4 will take place sometime in the spring of 2022. I anticipate it'll continue to be about art and the ecological crisis, which I've done from the beginning. But I'm going to take time to update the website and reformat things a bit. Je pense que je vais séparer, par exemple, les balados en langue française dans un balado séparé pour que ça soit plus facile d'accès et que la visibilité soit égale entre les épisodes en français et en anglais. So I'm just saying that I will be separating the French language podcast from the English. Right now they're in the same stream. I'll just create separate streams for them. I think that'll be easier access. And I'll be exploring themes as they come up, as I read and hear and learn. I'm going to talk to people who I find interesting and who I think you should hear about. And one of the ideas that I'm going to explore more is the idea of liminal space. And those of you who listened to episode 96 will remember this statement by Joan Sullivan.
We find ourselves in a liminal space right now. And liminal space means it's that time between what was and what's next. That's where we are. It's a place of not knowing. And unless all of us humans, and not just artists, recognize that we are already in a transition, not just an energy transition, but a cultural, a democratic, a social transition, there is an end. We will come out of this. No one knows how, but we will pass through. It's inevitable. And what waits on the other side is up to us to design.
And indeed, the other side is up to us to design. I hope to see you on the other side of season 3, which will be season 4. To hear you, to see you, please feel free to drop me a line if you have thoughts. And thank you so much for listening. This episode was basically wrapping up season 3, reflecting upon some of the things that worked, some of the things that didn't work. And onwards. Take care. Merci.